Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Very Cold Lasagna podcast. Or if you're new to this show, welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna podcast. I am your host, Dylan Lasagna, once again bringing you all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for you sports fans out there like you and me. Or if you're non-sports fans out there, welcome to the show. But anyway, this is episode number 321. In this episode, the topic at hand is the NFL playoffs. Yes, we're here. It is finally time. It is the most wonderful time of the NFL year. That is right. It is the beginning of the NFL playoffs, and it all starts with NFL Wild Card Weekend, or as they used to call it a couple years ago, Super Wild Card Weekend. But I don't know why they don't market that anymore. Anyway, we're here to talk about NFL Wild Card Weekend 2025 to 2026, because some people like to rag on certain people about how it's the year 2026, but in technicality, with the NFL, it's still the 2025 season. But anyway, it's the 2025 NFL Wildcard Weekend, and that's why we're here to give you my filthy casual preview, my filthy casual guide to this weekend's slate of action as we kick off the NFL playoffs. So yeah, strap in, buckle up, get your drinks, get your food to eat, put on your headphones, or maybe blast it wherever you are as we get you ready for the NFL playoffs this coming weekend in the most filthy casual manner. So that being said, let's get started with this topic at hand. So for all the filthy casual listeners out there, for the people that are just tuning into this podcast for the first time, or maybe you're a vet to the Very Cold Lasagna podcast, and welcome back, by the way. For those of you that are not in the know about the NFL and its wildcard weekend, what exactly is it? What exactly is NFL wildcard weekend? What is the playoffs? What is the start of this thing? Well, as I do every year when the playoffs come around, what is this thing? Well, let me give you a brief breakdown of this thing. The NFL wildcard round is basically how it is in almost every sport when it comes to their postseason, their playoffs, etc., etc. It is the first round. It is the first round of the NFL's playoffs, their postseason, and this is for the teams that failed to grab the number one seed in their conference, that being the NFC and the AFC. This year, the top seeds are held by the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC, and on the AFC side, it is the Denver Broncos. So for all the seeds below, that's number 2 to 7 in each conference, they're going to be playing each other for our entertainment in different matchups spread throughout the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So that's seeds 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, and 4 versus 5, with the winners advancing to next weekend's divisional playoffs. That's being the second round of the playoffs for next week, which we'll also talk about. So that's bringing us NFL Wildcard Weekend, aka Super Wildcard Weekend, as I'll promote it here as Super Wildcard Weekend, unlike the NFL and Roger Goodell. God damn it. But when it comes to Wildcard Weekend, the winners of that, if it happens to be a lower seed like number 7 or number 6, those lower seeds will get the prize of facing the top seed, whether it be the Seahawks or the Broncos. They'll get the prize of going to the number 1 seed next week. So now that they gave you a breakdown of the Wildcard Weekend that is to come, that starts on Saturday, let's break down the slate of games that's to come for our entertainment. And yeah, I don't know if you're eating some good place or going to some bar, whatever. You're going to be in for a treat, or depending on how things go this coming weekend, not so treat. But let's talk about these games, which begin on a Saturday afternoon or on a Saturday night, wherever you are in the world. This begins on a Saturday afternoon on the NFC side of things, beginning with the 5-seeded Los Angeles Rams taking on the number 4-seeded and NFC South champion Carolina Panthers. So this is a rematch from week number 13, where the heavily favored LA Rams got upset upsetted by the heavily underdogged Carolina Panthers in a very tight, suddenly very tight battle down in Carolina. So, yeah, this is a rematch of that, and the Rams are looking to avenge that, while the Panthers are once again looking for that upset once again to this time eliminate the Rams from postseason contention. So, looking at both teams and how they were heading into the season and how things ended up for them in the regular season. So let's start with the Rams. Let's start with the LA Rams. When you look at how the Rams were going into the regular season, they had the preseason expectations of, not only repeating as NFC West champions like they were at this point in time last year, but they were also expected to go on a much deeper playoff run heading into the regular season. And who knows? Maybe they would have went on us into the Super Bowl. But those expectations were initially in trouble because Matthew Stafford was suffering a nagging back injury during training camp and preseason, and that threatened to keep him out for at least the first month of the regular season and maybe even more than that. But he was able to come back and play week 1 from there on in, and from that point onwards, he played one of his best career seasons with a highly efficient offense led by him, receivers Puka Nacua, and free agent acquisition Devontae Adams, and the running back duo of Blake Corum and Kyron Williams, and a very good offensive line. So, all in all, Matthew Stafford put out one of his best career seasons and is one of the 2 guys in the running for MVP. We'll talk about the other guy in a little bit of a while. Meanwhile, spearheading that other side of the ball, they also possess a young front 7, which did great last year, and once again had another very good year. This one's led by Jared Verse and Byron Young on the front 7, alongside linebackers Nate Ladman, Braden Fisk, and Kobe Turner on the front 4. They did very good this year in hurting and slowing down opposing offenses, although on the defensive side of the ball, they have a lot of question marks in their pass defense. But nonetheless, this Rams team, they were still in the prime position to win the division again. But towards the end of the season, they had 3 losses late in the year that cost them that spot. Finished the season 12-5 and putting them in this current position as the 5 seed. With the common theme in those losses for the Rams, alongside the 2 losses to the Eagles and a beaten up 49ers team early in the year, was giving away big leads. And in the case of the Panthers, and I believe it was to the Seahawks, it's downplaying to their competition. They downplayed too much their competition to the point where, and again, to the point of the Seahawks game in week 16, they gave up that big lead that eventually cost them the division. So they're going into this one, even though they're on the road, they're gunning for vengeance on these Panthers. So looking at the number 4 seeded in NFC South champion Carolina Panthers, not many expectations were had on this team, despite them competing in a very lowly NFC South, where honestly not many expectations were had on any one of these teams. So they started off the season 1-3, and again, there were not many expectations for them to compete in that division, but they managed to string together wins in the next 4 of their 5 games, going into the halfway point of the year, and they managed to catch up with the Bucks and the Falcons in the division, who and both of those teams were doing well for themselves at that point, but Carolina was catching on. This was thanks to the surge of backup running back Rico Dowdle starting in the place of the injured Chuba Hubbard, and you got better, yet still kind of inconsistent play from Bryce Young, but they managed to rattle off 2 big upset wins over the Dallas Cowboys and, more importantly, the Green Bay Packers on the road. So this team was still pretty inconsistent in the win-loss category the rest of the way, but they still had the biggest win of the year, aside from those Packers, the Rams, before their bye week. So to close out the year for the Carolina Panthers, they still managed to lose 3 of their 4 last games, 3 of them coming within the division, but they managed to escape with the NFC South at 8-9 due to a 3-way tiebreak that Falcons have to help them out with. Yeah, that weird Saints Falcons game where both the Bucks and the Panthers had to be rooting on opposing sides. So yeah, the Panthers couldn't outright win it because of a lot of mistakes that they made. So looking at this team, it's pretty flawed. It's very inconsistent, especially with the quarterback play of Bryce Young, some questionable coaching decisions from head coach Dave Canales, and they don't have a lot of pass rush help. But on the positive side, you have a pretty solid running back duo in Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, a rookie receiver, Territoa McMillan, who helps out in the aerial attack and a very reliable receiver for Bryce Young. And even with the lack of a pass rush, you have a nice defensive backfield of J.C. Horn, Mike Jackson, and Trevion Mooring that can generate turnovers and go man-to-man with some of these opposing offenses, including this Rams team. So it gives Carolina somewhat of a fighter's chance. And I mean, if they could do it once against the Rams, they could it gives you some kind of belief that they could do it again. So looking at the injury report for both of these teams going into this key game that kicks off the playoffs, starting from the Rams side of things, they are getting healthier. That's the most important thing going into this one. Devontae Adams is expected to be back in this game, so it kind of completes the offense and really helps out Puka Nacua. Devontae Adams missed time to close out the season with a hamstring injury, so getting him back will be great for this team. Defensively, Quentin Lake at safety is also expected to return from an elbow injury. So other than that, the offense and the defense should be good. The Panthers don't have many notable injuries, so they should be relatively healthy on their end. Looking at the keys to victory for both these teams, for the LA Rams, it's pretty simple. They can't downplay Carolina like they did back in Week 13. That includes Matthew Stafford having a turnover-free game. He cannot throw 3 interceptions. That includes a pick 6 to the defense, and he cannot. I believe he also had a fumble in that game, so he cannot create self-induced turnovers against a feisty and I guess what's the right term? Nothing to lose Panthers team, especially in a winner go home game. So for the Panthers, it's pretty simple. Do not overlook Carolina, like they did the first time around. Meanwhile, for the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young, he's got to play much better because in the last 2 weeks, he's been pretty much the same old Bryce Young that we've known him since he's in the last 2 years. He's got to play turnover-free football. He's thrown 3 interceptions, lost 1 or 2, at least 1 fumble in the last 2 games. So he's got to take better care of the football. I mean, he did better in the Rams game from a month ago. I think he had a turnover-free performance there, if I remember correctly. But in all, he's got to take real good care of the football if the Panthers want to have a fighting chance in this one. And then the pass rush, they got to find ways to get to Stafford. They got to find ways to get to him. Got to sack him and do what they did a month ago to force turnovers. So this is one of those games where for the Rams, they'll certainly go into this one having learned a lot of things from that loss and potentially get their get back against Carolina. But who knows? Maybe Carolina will adjust some things to make sure that they don't. I have this really risky guts feeling that the Panthers will come away with the upset again, because if there's one thing that the Panthers can expose in this game that could result in the Rams' downfall, it's that secondary. That secondary, it is very prone to explosive plays, and even small passing plays that can result in the big yaks, the yards after catch. Like that can really start something in the Rams defeat. So call me crazy, but I could see the Panthers like very slimmingly, like pull away from this one. Yeah, call me crazy on that one. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the Rams avenge their loss and turn it into a playoff win. Meanwhile, we close Saturday out with one of the most historic rivalries in the history of our sport, at least in the NFL. On the NFC side, we have the 7-seeded Green Bay Packers taking on the 2-seeded and NFC North Chicago Bears. And what better way to close it out? Yeah, a 3-match of their division rivalry, and it was one that they split the season series on in probably 2 of the really good games of this year. The Packers won the first one at home. The Bears won the second one in one of the best games of the year in an overtime thriller. Even though it was low scoring, it was pretty damn good when the Bears came back in that game to win it. So, yeah, we'll see what's to come in this highly anticipated 3-match. Although, of course, the NFL has to put it on Jeff Bezos' Prime Video. I don't know why. It couldn't be on NBC. It couldn't be on ESPN. They couldn't have a second CBS. Not even a Nickelodeon game. There's no Nickelodeon game this year, unfortunately, because I guess the play-by-play guy has moved on to bigger and better things. I get it. But anyway, let's talk about this game. Starting with the Green Bay Packers POV. Before the season started, expectations were pretty high for the Pack to make a Super Bowl run because when you look at that team at this point in time last year, when they were once again the 7th seed, they self-destructed. They imploded against the Philadelphia Eagles, the eventual Super Bowl champions at the time. They did not do good in that game. Jordan Love self-destructed with multiple turnovers. The defense had multiple ejections in that game and got penalized a lot. So it was an emotional implosion in that game. So they reflected a lot in the offseason. They made a few big moves throughout that period, including the first round draft acquisition of Texas receiver Matthew Golden, something that they had not done in a very long time, getting a top receiver in the first round when most of their drafts have been on defense. But the more important move that they made was right before the season started, and that was getting edge rusher Micah Parsons from the Dallas Cowboys in a big time trade, like literally, right before kickoff began to the regular season. So yeah, that was a very big move for the Pack to bolster up their defense, which was one of their weaknesses last year, and actually for the last 2 years. So early on, and for half of the year, they looked good on that promise. Jordan Love played well with the supporting cast of Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed, and Tucker Kraft. So that offense looked pretty well for themselves. And eventually when Christian Watson came back, he was making his case as the top receiver for this Packers offense. The defensive front seven greatly improved with Parsons now in the lineup, as this team looked well on their way to getting the NFC North, despite suffering 2 inexplicable losses to the Panthers and the Eagles back to back. So yeah, even that, the Packers still had the inside track to getting the division with a 4-game winning streak after those 2 bad losses. But that's when things start to unravel because you had Tucker Kraft tears ACL in that Panthers loss. And then a month later, when the team went to Denver, Micah Parsons also tore his ACL in that Week 15 loss to the Broncos, which snapped that 4-game winning streak that they had at the time. So the injuries started to pile up for this team. And without both of them, alongside other key players like Devontae Wyatt, Nathan Hobbs, Elton Jenkins, and Bo Melton on both sides of the ball, the Packers began to implode again. Not just because of the sketchy play, but with the injuries running wild on this team. The Packers ended the season on a 4-game losing streak, aside from the season finale. and they surrendered the division to the Bears in that Week 16 game, and they fell to the 7th seed again at 9-7-1. Again, when we look at this team, reflecting back on this Packers team, they had all the pieces together to finally go on a deep playoff run and eventually, potentially go to the Super Bowl. But eventually, injuries took that away from them. Especially the injuries to Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft. But even then, with the injuries, when Parsons was there, Jordan Love continues to keep making the same backbreaking and avoidable turnovers, which were made evident in the losses to Carolina, Philly, and Denver. Like, if Jordan Love in clutch time and in big moments, you can't have those turnovers that are going to kill this team. And then when you look at the defense, sure, you have a really good front seven, but the secondary still remains a really big question mark. Aside from Xavier McKinney, Keyshawn Nixon, and Carrington Valentine, like, they still keep getting burnt by opposing offenses. Like, they still allow a lot of big plays. So going into this game against the Bears, where I expect it to be another like burning game, like, they got to find ways to stop this team. So speaking of the Bears, the 2-seeded NFC North champion Bears, going into this season, this was one of the more intriguing ones to say. Last year, they were in Cancun. They were looking for their next head coach in Cancun. Prior to the end of the season, they were already done with Matt Eberflus, aka Matt Eberflush, down the toilet. After that Thanksgiving horrific ending to the Lions on Thanksgiving, and ironically enough, they replaced Matt Eberflush with a former Lions offensive coordinator, and in one of the most unusual Bears football kind of moves, in Ben Johnson. Yeah. So Ben Johnson moved from one NFC North team to the other, and for the first time in a long while, the Bears had an offensive-minded head coach, and it was a good offensive-minded head coach. So it helped out Caleb Williams in his year 2, and to further help out both of them, general manager Ryan Poles went all out by trading for guards Jonah Jackson and Joe Tooney, while signing center Drew Dalman to better round out that offensive line for Caleb, because Caleb in his rookie year was running for his life, and Ryan Poles didn't want that for him. So even with all that, not many expectations were had for them still. But yeah, and they started out 0-2, and the way they did was not great. They choked a big lead to the Minnesota Vikings on Monday night, and they got their asses beat by the Lions and Ben Johnson's return to Detroit the next week. But they managed to turn around by winning the next 9 or 10 games, most of which came in clutch time. Caleb Williams led a bunch of comebacks in those games ahead of an important December stretch. They went on to split the 2 games series with the Packers. Again, as I mentioned repeatedly, the second one being that overtime game that wound up winning the division for them to set up this rematch against the Pack. Looking at this team, the biggest strength of them is obviously that high-powered offense that Ben Johnson calls. Even if he could still be erratic at times, it has the bad habit still of holding the football too long. Caleb Williams has greatly improved in his second year. Obviously, he uses his mobility greatly, but he reads the ball. He reads the defenses, I'd say, much better than he did last year when he couldn't. And also helps that he has a better offensive line that allows him to do so. His top 2 receivers are DJ Moore and Romeo Odunze, who are a great service of him. But the reserves like Luther Burden III, Jade Walker, and Colston Loveland, they've really stepped up their game lately with Romeo Odunze out. The running back duo, though, of DeAndre Swift and 7th-round breakout rookie Kyle Monagai, they provide stability not seen in a Bears offense in a while. So overall, when you look at this offense, it is really balanced. But the main concern with this team going into the postseason, it lies in their defense. Even as they create the most turnovers in the league, as a lot of these announcers like to point out, the pass rush doesn't really get to opposing quarterbacks that much, which puts more pressure on in the secondary to create said turnovers and keep receivers at bay. And that's even with a pretty solid backfield with Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Jalen Johnson. Like they still have to do a lot of the heavy lifting because the pass rush can't hit home. And that was pretty evident in those games against probably not the best example, but the Eagles, but more apparent in that game against the 49ers 2 weeks ago. So yeah, with this Bears team, sure, they have a really damn good offense, but that defense is pretty concerning going into this rematch against the Bears. Not the Bears, the Packers. So looking at the injury report for both of these teams, the Packers are relatively healthy. Like the notable names like Matthew Golden, Wicks, Edwin Cooper, and Dukas Van Ness. Like some of those key players that rested last week, they're much healthier going into this game against the Bears. So yeah, sure. Some will say that the Stars should have played last week, but there was nothing to play for. The Packers were already locked into the 7th seed. So this week of that game of rest may prove to be vital for this Packers team going into this game against the Bears. Speaking of the Bears, CJ Gardner-Johnson is in the concussion protocol. So if he wants to play in this game, he has to clear it, like with everyone else that ends up in the concussion protocol. Offensive lineman Braxton Jones, he has a possibility of returning to the lineup because he missed multiple games with a knee injury, and he'll have to be activated off of IR to do so. Corner Kyler Gordon, he may also come off of IR after missing the minimum of 4 games with a groin issue. Romeo Odunze, the second number 1 receiver, looks set to return Saturday with the foot injury that kept him out since week 13. So, and that would be a big boost for the offense, as Caleb Williams could certainly use the help too. So looking at the keys to victory for both of these teams, for the Packers, they got to get more production out of Josh Jacobs because I have not heard his name in the last month. He's been relatively quiet. He has not had like a signature game that I can remember in the last month. And then Jordan Love, he's got to minimize the turnovers again. Like this is a time of year where, like especially in the last month, where he has been a turnover machine. Like I mentioned, like multiple times, like in the last couple minutes, like he makes way too many avoidable turnovers, and especially in this time of year. Like at this point last year, where he was in Philadelphia, he made 2 picks that he could have not made, but he made it anyway. So if he wants to beat the Bears, he has to have a turnover-free performance, and he has to make avoidable. He has to not throw avoidable turnovers, if you get what I mean. Meanwhile, for the Bears, they got to start out much faster on offense because those slow starts that I mentioned in my final week 18, my final regular season review of the 2025 campaign. Yeah. Much slower starts in the playoffs are going to end your season really quick in the postseason. So Caleb Williams in the offense, they got to start out much faster. They got to score really quick, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal. Otherwise, your season is done in a flash. Meanwhile, defensively, you got to force turnovers on Jordan Love in the offense, especially in the pass rush. Like if you want to prove that you're one of the top teams that forces turnovers, that's the way to do it. So this is like Saturday's probably one of the more unpredictable slates that you can think of, because a lot of it's a toss up. Like with the Panthers and Rams game, like you don't really know, even though the Rams are heavily favored in that one. But in this game too is like another case of that, because sure, the Packers have the experience in terms of the edge experience, but the Bears are like so high powered, but they're also very inconsistent. So that said, it's an even toss up, but I like the Bears offensively in this, so my gut says them. And yeah, my picks are terrible. So as we move on to the Sunday slate, now we start to tread into the AFC side of things as we kick things off in the land of the all elite, as the 3-seeded AFC South champion Jacksonville Jaguars host the 6-seeded Buffalo Bills. And for the first time in a long while, this is unfamiliar territory for the Buffalo Bills, having to start their playoffs on the road for the first time since 2019, that they had to go on the road in the first round of the playoffs. Well, why is that? Well, let's take a look back at their season. For the 6-seeded Buffalo Bills, high expectations were once again surrounding Josh Allen and this team to keep hold of the AFC East and finally make their long overdue Super Bowl appearance after falling just short last year in the AFC title game to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And while they were starting out strong on that expectation, going 4-0, they managed to lose 2 straight to the New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons, with the Patriots loss proving very key towards the end of the year. Along the way to a 12-5 finish, they wound up losing to the Miami Dolphins inexplicably and the Houston Texans. And as a result, they lost out to the AFC. They lost the AFC East to the Patriots, and they now head into the playoffs as a 6-seed wildcard. They could have been at least a 5th seed, but no. They just poked the bear too many times, and now they're a 6th seed. So, yeah, even then, even though they're a 6th seed, Josh Allen, out of almost the entire field in the playoffs, he's still the premier quarterback in this bracket, despite not much of a supporting cast, and making some boneheaded mistakes that led to those 5 losses. And around him in this very meddling supporting cast is Pro Bowl and most likely all pro running back James Cook, who's had a really good year being the league leading rusher. He has been on a tear this year. But defensively is where their biggest weakness lies, because despite a good pass rushing group of AJ Epinesa, Larry Ogunjobi, Greg Rousseau, and Matt Milano, their secondary, it gives up a lot of plays that forces Josh Allen to save their asses. Having to be the Superman once again for, 5 straight seasons now, since the Bills have been AFC East champions, aside from this one, of course. Josh Allen has to be Superman because, well, the man's got no help. But despite those deficiencies, though, and now they have to play on the road to start the playoffs, I will say, this is the Bills' best chance to finally make the Super Bowl, because, well, there's no Lamar Jackson, and there's especially no Patrick Mahomes to stand in his way to get there. But even then, they still have to deliver on their part. They still have to, play their best football, because there are still plenty of quality teams, even with their inexperience, like, the Patriots, the Broncos, and even these Jaguars. They have to get through them if they want to finally make the Super Bowl and potentially win it under Josh Allen. Meanwhile, for the AFC South and 3-seeded Jaguars, last offseason, they were in Cancun, in the land of all elite, looking at how Tony Khan's wrestling promotion is, sinking to 500K ratings. I don't know. I haven't watched AEW in a while, but anyway, they've moved off of Doug Peterson after a disappointing 5-12 2024. Then they, after a bit of a weird hiring cycle that led to Trent Baalke getting fired as GM, and eventually they settled on former Bucs offensive coordinator Liam Cohen as the new head coach. The Jaguars look to regain control of the AFC South. And yeah, this is an AFC South, just like with the NFC South. That was kind of not much expectations were held, even though many thought that the Texans were going to, maintain control of it. And the Jaguars, they got off to a pretty good start. It was 4-0? Oh no, 3-1, the 4-1, because they had big wins over the 49ers and especially the Kansas City Chiefs at the halfway point. But the offense notably underwent frustrating growing pains, especially Trevor Lawrence, who had trouble protecting the football and understanding what exactly Liam Cohen wanted in this scheme. And Liam Cohen got very frustrated and heated at Trevor Lawrence during this halfway period. So yeah, like you could tell the tension was there, pal. And I'm not mean to, that kind of tension. But anyway, when they came back from the bye week, the Jaguars went to win 9 of their last 10 games, including statement wins over the Chargers and the Broncos. The Broncos one being the biggest one of them all, while steadily improving on both sides of the ball. The defensive backfield of Christian Benford, Christian Broswell, Greg Newsome II, and Eric Murray. They led a defense that was bend but don't break, and they created a lot of turnovers, just like they did early in the season. Meanwhile, Trevor Lawrence, he managed to severely cut down on his turnovers, and he performed much better overall, thanks to a lot of quality help stepping up to help him out, including trade acquisition, Jacoby Myers, and late season breakouts in Parker Washington and Brenton Strange at tight end. So when you look at the squad that Liam Cohen has put together, they really turned things around to finish the season 12-5 and get the division for the first time since 2022 to set up this rematch from 2017 against the Buffalo Bills, which ironically was the first postseason appearance for both of them since a long, long time. So yeah, it's a rematch since then. So looking at the injury report for both of these teams, the Bills, their key defenders like Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano, they should be good to go despite missing the initial practice. Josh Allen, he has been dealing with a foot injury for the last month or so, but I mean, this is Josh Allen. He has that never give up. You'll never see the 17, that kind of John Cena mentality. It's not stopping him from playing. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the key offensive linemen, Patrick McCarry, he looks set to return after missing 2 games with a back injury, so it'll be a big boost for their front 5. Backup lineman, on the other hand, Cole Van Lammen, he's 50-50 to play with the knee injury from the finale against the Titans, so we'll see that O-line depth being tested in this one. And looking at the keys to victory for both of these teams, for the Bills, they need more contributors besides Dolan Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and James Cook to show up in this one because Josh Allen needs all the help he can get. Of course, Josh Allen's got to minimize the mistakes that he makes in these kind of games, but the rest of the supporting cast has to help him out too. The front 7, they got to minimize any chance that Trevor Lawrence has to throw in open spaces. So they got to get some pressure on Lawrence and force him into the mistakes that he's been making early on in the season. For the Jaguars, speaking of Trevor Lawrence, he's got to play mistake-free football. Play how he's been playing in December. He's been on a heater, and he's barely made any back-breaking interceptions. That's severely changed the game. So he's got to keep doing that. Defensively, they're not the best. They can't break. They got to get key stops and force turnovers on Josh Allen in any way possible. So that's going to be the difference maker in this one. And as with almost half of these matches, the first 2 matches that I talked about, this is probably this is another hard one to pick. That's why I can't really pick unlike with the first 2 that I talked about, I can't pick a definitive winner in this one because the Jaguars are playing red hot right now, but at the same time you can't really you can't count out Josh Allen even with his flawed team. So I'm gonna leave it as a toss up with this opening playoff matchup on the Sunday slate. So now we get to probably one of the, if not the most lopsided matchup that I'm expecting on the whole playoff slate on this opening playoff weekend, and that is my San Francisco 49ers, the 6th seed, taking on the 3-seeded NFC East champion Philadelphia Eagles. The team of destiny that was not to be. my San Francisco 49ers. Let's talk about them. Because after last year's injury mania, running wild, and an underperforming Super Bowl losers curse disaster of the team, Kyle Shanahan and company underwent a somewhat youth movement, and they got rid of some of their key yet aging players from their 5-year playoff run. They got rid of Deebo Samuel, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, and a bunch of others. They got rid of them via free agency, or in the case of Deebo, they traded him away. Due to this, many had predicted them to finish dead last again in the NFC West. And it looked to be on track because of even more injuries to begin the year, with Brock Purdy and George Kittle being lost in game 1. But they managed to weather the storm of that, despite even more weekly injuries, because they got surprisingly good play from backup Mac Jones, who also played hurt too, by the way, but he managed to, John Cena it throughout his time. And you also got a resurgent comeback player of the year-ish type of season from Christian McCaffrey. So, yeah, all in all, the 49ers managed to toughen things out throughout the halfway point of the year. And then once Brock Purdy came back in that Week 11 game in Arizona, the Niners managed to win 6 straight games to position themselves in a surprising position for a winner-take-all game for both the division and the NFC's top seed with the Seattle Seahawks. Unfortunately, they lost that game to put themselves at 12-5. But before I get into the negatives of that, I do want to point out, to just even get into that position of being in a winner-take-all game, getting to 12 wins despite all the injuries, it's a little surprising. I didn't expect that. After all the injuries, pretty much doubling their win total from last year, it's surprising for my 49ers. But at the same time, it was also the game where they lost even more players on defense, which I'll honestly get into in a bit. And it just goes to show you, just how much they lost, more than just the game. They also missed a lot of how much of the key players that they lost, like Nick Bosa, who was lost much earlier in the year to an ACL tear, and Fred Warner, who was also lost earlier in the year with the fractured ankle. Their presence was really, really felt in this game and throughout the month of December. So yeah, they finished 12-5, but heading into this game, they're severely banged up on both sides of the ball. So we'll get into why that is in just a bit, because the injury report is not great for my 49ers. So looking at the NFC East and 3-seeded Philadelphia Eagles, the reigning, defending, and undisputed Super Bowl champions of last year, they managed to repeat as NFC East champions and break the flip-flop curse. At least almost every team in the division being the division champions, that curse is broken. Which started since in 2005. But it hasn't been smooth sailing for the Super Bowl champs. Jalen Hurts in the offense once again had to adjust to a new offensive coordinator in Kevin Patullo, because Kellen Moore, once the Super Bowl was over in New Orleans, Kellen Moore decided to stay in New Orleans as the head coach. So yeah, Kevin Patullo was the new offense coordinator. Yeah, it hasn't exactly panned out because of predictable passing calls to force feed AJ Brown's selfish ass, along with injuries to the offensive line, notably Lane Johnson at right tackle, and not even Nick Sirianni sharing play calls with Patullo has worked out. So yeah, it's not been a great transition from Moore to Patullo. But yeah, the biggest strength of this team en route to a 12-5 record and winning the division has been Vic Fangio's defense, with their really, really good front seven and a bend but don't break secondary, led by Cooper DeJean and company. But even in their 5 losses, that defense it's been breakable because of the offense's inability to balance them out. Still, they have a really good advantage, not just for this game, but potential to repeat as champions if they can just put it together offensively, especially in a wide open NFC. So this is probably like the most lopsided matchup I could think of in the playoffs. But then again, it's anyone's game, almost anyone's game in this one. So looking at the injury report for both these teams, like I can't even look. I can't even speak of this. Like for my team, it's I don't know, man. For my 49ers, Trent Williams, unlikely to play with the hamstring injury they suffered 2 weeks ago. And Austin Pleasant is going to have to start again, most likely. Ricky Pearsall, the 49ers' supposed top receiver, that's also made of glass. Probably also not expected to play because he re-aggravated his knee injury from way back in September. And he's also dealing with an ankle injury, apparently, from the hip drop tackle from the Titans game a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, we're probably not going to see Ricky Pearsall in this one. Tam Bethune is also lost for the playoffs because of a torn groin from the Seahawks game. So that's the backup to Fred Warner gone. D. Winters is 50-50 to play because of an ankle injury. I don't expect him to play. So this prompted the team to sign Kaiser White, who last played in Arizona, I think this year or last year, as a desperation move to go alongside Eric Kendricks, who will now be the guy calling the plays. I mean, can't get any worse than this, right? Can't get any worse than that. And then receiver Jacob Counting, he finally had his IR practice window open, but I don't know what is exactly going to do because Kyle Shanahan is not expecting him to return because of the very short turnaround. So what was the point? What was the point then? For the Philadelphia Eagles, they're going to this relatively healthy. Offensive lineman Lane Johnson expecting to make his return, missing a month with his foot injury. So, yeah, they're going to have a much better offensive line. Jalen Carter, that's something to note about him. He's dealing with a nagging hip injury, but he probably will play. Rookie linebacker Jihad Campbell is also set to return, missing a few games from back and shoulder injuries. So, in summary, the Eagles are going into this healthy, while the 49ers, the supposed team of destiny, the one I thought was going to, finally finish their story, will not. The keys to victory for both of these teams. For my 49ers, just pray. All they could do at this point is pray. Pray for two things. Pray if they want to win this game somehow. Pray that Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo fuck over their own offense so hard up the ass that they can find opportunities like with their own offense to attack. That's it. Call me a non-believer. Call me an unfaithful asshole. Like, come on, man. I'm just, you want me to be faithful? I'll be faithfully realistic with you. Like, what keys to victory are, what do you want me to say? Like, oh, Brock Purdy can attack this secondary. Like they can attack, like they can use Christian McCaffrey up the middle. Like what exactly is there to say with this depleted ass beating up team that somehow for 10 years cannot stay healthy? Like, I'm being faithfully realistic with y'all. That's me being faithfully realistic that this team cannot stay healthy for at least one full season. There. And then speaking of healthy, you better pray that Brock Purdy leaves Philadelphia healthy, because remember the last time 3 years ago when Brock Purdy played in a certain NFC Championship game in his rookie year in Philadelphia in the first opening drive. Better pray to that man he stay healthy against that even better defensive line. For the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, if you want to run away from this game very early on, just spam the fuck out of Saquon Barkley. Spam Saquon Barkley over the 49ers defense. They're going to be missing Fred Warner, Tatum Bethune, probably even D. Winters. They don't have Nick Bosa. They don't have Michael Williams. Just spam Saquon Barkley. You don't need to do much with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I mean, that's just the cherry on topper. Just spam Saquon Barkley. And then bully San Francisco's offensive line. You got a really good defensive front. So, I mean, what else more do I need to say about my San Francisco 49ers? They're going to, I don't know. Barring some miracle. I mean, I said this, back in 2021? 2021, where I expected them to get their ass whooped, to get smashed by the Dallas Cowboys in the first round. And then they ended up getting smashed by the Cowboys in the first round. I also said that when I expected them to get smashed by the Packers in the divisional playoffs. That ended up not happening either. I didn't say that. I didn't really say that about them in the NFC Championship game that year, but you get my point. Like, who knows? Like, I say that they're going to get their ass whooped by Philadelphia, and then who knows? Maybe the opposite happens. All I'm saying is, if for the 49ers fans out there, I'm just being realistically faithful with you all. I'm not being a bandwagon, all of that. I'm not being negative Nancy. I'm being a realist. This team is too beat up to do anything right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And now the injuries are starting to come up offensively. This team, for as much as I wanted to believe that they were the team of destiny to finally finish their story, especially in their home stadium, like this could have been the year. But unfortunately, it comes to an end in Philadelphia. And they're going to get their ass whooped. They're going to get a Philadelphia ass whooping. And it's going to come to the Eagles. So I don't want to talk anymore about that. Let's move on to the nightcapper on the AFC side of things, as the AFC finishes out the wildcard slate. Starting with the Sunday night game, as the LA Chargers, the 7th seed, take on the 2-seeded AFC East champion, New England Patriots. So this is one of the, I say one of the more interesting games of the playoffs early on, because it features two young stud quarterbacks in Justin Herbert and the other MVP runner-up candidates, besides Matthew Stafford, in Drake May. But let's start off with the LA side of things, the Charger side of things, because with the LA Chargers, I thought they were going to be the AFC West champions early on, because they started off 3-0, all of those wins coming within the AFC West. Like, they had the very early track record to win the division as long as they kept performing well and kept winning. But the problem was they ended up finishing 11-6, and those 6 losses were half of what the Broncos had, which were enough for them to seal the division towards the end of the season. And this, like, a lot of the reason why the Chargers not really fell apart necessarily during the season to lose the division was because of injuries to the offensive line. Even if this team was somewhat balanced, they suffered significant injuries to Rashawn Slater, who was gone before the season even started. Joe Alt, their left tackle, he got injured against the Giants, and while he came back a month later, he suffered a season-ending ankle injury. And their replacements and backups, they were in and out of the lineup weekly. So Justin Herbert, he had to deal with a variety of makeshift offensive lines with the injuries to Slater and Joe Alt. And he was getting beat up out there. And it came to a point where it was like week 13 or 14, where he himself suffered an injury to his throwing hand. The good thing was that he was able to come back. Like, he didn't miss any time. But the thing was, when he got surgery for that hand, his non-throwing hand, he had to wear a glove to protect it. So, yeah, that's something he had to be careful with. The offensive line had to protect him with. So, yeah, the offensive line is a major question mark going up against this Patriots team. And when you look at the defensive front, still pretty good for them with Tuli Toputu. I'm sorry if I'm can't pronounce that name. It's pretty terrible. Leading a tough pass rush. It also includes Khalil Mack. Still performing pretty well for them. In the defensive backfield, still pretty solid for them. Derwin James able to create some pretty good plays for them. So all in all, going up to New England, there still remains some flaws with this Chargers team, but even with the injured Justin Herbert, the Chargers will and can find ways to pick apart this Patriots team. So when you look at the New England Patriots as the AFC East and number 2 seed, going into this past season, they had a significant offseason last year. It was a big offseason full of changes, which was spearheaded with the hiring of new coach and former Patriots player Mike Vrabel, who was replacing the one and done and totally in and over his head coach Gerard Mayo. And this is also spearheaded with a variety of free agent and draft acquisitions to help Drake May out. And it really paid off. As they overcame the growing pains of a 1-2 start to pretty much dominate the rest of the way en route to the AFC East title and the AFC's 2 seed. So, some will question the very easy schedule that the Patriots had, but I mean, as I say with a lot of teams, you got to play what you have on the schedule. And the Patriots, yes, they had the very easy schedule, but it was how they played with the very easy schedule. Flashing potential from last year, Drake May, he's played a lot better, and he's played like an MVP candidate with faster reads, passes, and mobility. He also helps when he has a really good offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels. I mean, compared to last year, and especially more time in the pocket to do so with the great investment in the offensive line. And that includes the 4th overall pick in Will Campbell, and helping him in his second year is veteran receiver Stephon Diggs, who signed in free agency. The emerging Kayshon Boutte, the 2023 late round pick, and the running back duo Travion Henderson, the rookie, and Ramondre Stevenson, who finally overcame his fumbling issues. Defensively, they possess a tough tandem that includes a front 7 of Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, and Harold Landry, and a backfield of Christian Gonzalez and rookie Kobe Minor. So that Patriots defense, even though they give up a big play here and there, they're still a tough cookie to deal with. The only big question marks with this team, they're pretty young. They don't have a lot of experience in the postseason, if any at all. They've had trouble scoring in the red area. They've only at times scored touchdowns rather than instead scored field goals, especially in the month of December. And for the most part, a lot of their wins have been 1-score wins, because especially with opponents like the Bengals, the Falcons, and other lowly teams, they downplay their competition. Hence, some of their last-minute wins. So, all in all, for the Patriots, they're still a pretty they've a really good team that has turned it around from last year. You know, it's just still some question marks going to this big game in their first playoff game since 2021. So looking at the injury report for both of these teams, they're going in mostly healthy. The key thing for the Chargers, though, is that Amarian Hampton, their rookie running back, is 50-50 with an ankle injury. But if he is out, that's a big hit for the Chargers offense. Obviously, Justin Herbert's hand injury is something to watch for the Patriots. They're going into this game with a relatively healthy defense as well, because Robert Spillane, Harold Landry, and Jared Wilson, they're back at practice. And barring a setback, they're expected to be back to help out their defense that has struggled in recent weeks. So looking at the keys to victory for both of these teams, they gotta protect Justin Herbert on the LA Chargers side of things. Whatever's left of the offensive line, you just gotta hope and pray like that Patriots front 7 doesn't bring out heavy blitzes, heavy pressure. And even with the heavy pressure, the offensive line has got to do its job and protect Justin Herbert so he can get out good plays to his supporting cast, especially to Ladd McConkey. And then on the other side of the coin, the Chargers own front 4. They got to quickly pressure Drake May and keep him in the box. They got to challenge the Patriots offensive line to keep Drake May within the pocket. So the Chargers, they got a tall task on their hand. Meanwhile, for the Patriots, they got to find a weak point around the Chargers' top 5 pass defense. The Chargers, for all their own flaws, despite giving up a lot of big plays, they don't really give up a lot of points. So the Patriots, they got to find some kind of weak point, especially when they get to the red area, because that's one of their weaknesses in terms of the Patriots. Meanwhile, speaking of the red zone, you can't leave points off the board. You can't leave touchdowns off the board when you get to that red area. You got to find ways to score there, especially in the passing game. Like Drake May has got to capitalize on that. So this is going to be one of the more. This is probably going to be one of those very close, like probably the closest game out of the bunch on wildcard weekend. And again, it's the hardest one, I'd say, other than the Bears Packers game and maybe the Bills Jaguars game. This is the hardest one to call. I'd say it's going to be very close in favor of the Chargers, just because of the experience that Justin Herbert has, other than blowing a playoff game, unfortunately, but maybe they turn it around this time around, and you got an experienced playoff coach in Jim Harbaugh. But maybe the experience edge comes into play with that team. Then we cap things off with the Monday night game over on ESPN on the AFC side of things, as the 5-seeded Houston Texans take on the 4-seeded and recently crowned AFC North champion Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is one of the big games to close out wildcard weekend. And let's take a look at both these teams. For the Houston Texans, they didn't exactly get off to a great start on the season. They started out 0-3, and DeMeco Ryans' job was heavily called into question. But the Texans went on to go 3-5 before they embarked on a 9-game winning streak to finish 12-5. It was a really great turnaround for them, but they just fell a little bit short of winning the AFC South due to tiebreakers with the Jags. But nonetheless, here they are. They surpassed some early season expectations, early season disappointment, and they're back in the playoff dance. And a large reason for that was their top 5 defense, which is centered around their very aggressive front 7 of Will Anderson Jr., Danico Autry, Danielle Hunter, Sheldon Rankins, and Azeez Al-Shaair. They can really speed past opposing offensive lines to reach quarterbacks and generate turnovers in a hurry. But I will say that the major question marks around this Texans team, if they want to get to the divisional playoffs, are their backfield, their secondary. Even if they have really good players like Kamari Lassiter, who is expected back for this game, Jalen Petrie and Derek Stingley Jr. They, like, aside from those 3, their secondary, it's questionable. It's questionable, even though they rank in the top 5 in passing defense. CJ Stroud is probably turning in his worst year as a pro quarterback, like, especially not even like early on, like a large majority of the year. He's had a lot of turnovers. He's been sacked way too many times, like self-inflicted. And the Texans have won 9 straight in spite of him. Hell, you can even make an argument. In the few games that CJ Stroud was out, his backup Davis Mills did better than him. So going into this game, the defense is going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But in all, this is the first time in their franchise history that they're playing a playoff game as a wildcard team on the road, and they're not opening the entire playoff slate. They're not that obligatory Texans Saturday game that kicks off the whole slate of games. So looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers as the AFC North and 4-seeded playoff team, going into the offseason, they were done with Russell Wilson. They were done with Justin Fields. That was their 3rd and 4th quarterback in like the 5 year in the 3 to 4 years since Ben Roethlisberger retired back in 2021. So now they had to find another solution. Rather than go and draft a quarterback again, like they did in 2022 with the failed experiment with Kenny Pickett, they turned to 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who recently just turned 42. He was playing his 21st season, coming off game released by the New York Jets, and he was a late offseason signee. Again, that made him the 5th different starting quarterback for the Steelers since Big Ben retired. So as we enter this past season, they started the season 4-1, and they finished the rest of the year trading wins and losses, usually 2 straight losses and a win. And unfortunately for them, that allowed the Ravens to catch up to them in the division race. And despite a variety of personnel issues, they managed to win their final 4 or 5 games, and that included the final game versus Baltimore that saw Rodgers throw the go-ahead touchdown to Calvin Austin III, and they needed Tyler Loop to miss the game-winning field goal for the Ravens to win the AFC North for the first time since 2020. So, yeah, here the Pittsburgh Steelers are in this position, finally hosting a playoff game for the first time since the pandemic. But even with a 10-7 record and as division champions, they face the previously mentioned personnel problems that could prove troublesome against this Texans team. Aaron Rodgers has at times, looked like the peak Rodgers that we've seen from a decade ago, but for the most part, he has played well past that. Past his prime Rodgers that we last saw, back when he was with the New York Jets. But not helping him, however, is a lacking supporting cast in the air. DK Metcalf prior to his suspension, and Pat Freiermuth as they were the only real receiving threats. But although others like Calvin Austin III, they have come around in the 2 games that Metcalf was suspended. Jalen Warren, the running back, he's provided some stability to help Rodgers in the passing attack. Defensively, their strength is within the front 7, spearheaded by TJ Watt, Patrick Queen, and Cam Hayward. But the secondary still remains hit or miss, even with Jalen Ramsey and Chuck Clark leading the way. So overall, with this Steelers team, they're going to be facing a real challenge against this Texans team, especially defensively. Looking at the injury report for both these teams, at the time of this recording, I don't have the full injury report because given this is a Monday night game, both teams are not practicing. I'm not practicing quite yet, but there were a few notables when it came to the IR stuff, like safety Jalen Reed. He's expected to be back practicing, but that doesn't guarantee he'll be back for this Monday night game. Kamari Lassiter, who didn't play in the season finale against the Colts, he's expected to play. So that's a big boost for the secondary. For the Steelers, safety Deshaun Elliott, he's expected to be back practicing from IR, and he's looking to return for this game, being gone since week 8 with a knee injury. And DK Metcalf is back at practice from his 2-game suspension after he punched a Lions fan in that week 16 game. So looking at the keys to victory for both these teams, obviously the number one thing that the Texans need is CJ Stroud. Got to have his best game of the season. And not whether it's regular season or this game, CJ Stroud has got to light up this Steelers team. He cannot let the bright lights be too bright for him. Like CJ Stroud, really needs to come through in this one. Like he can't let the defense do all the heavy lifting because that Steelers defense, especially the front 7, is going to really come after him. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they got to continue their top 5 season and harass Aaron Rodgers more ways than one. So even though Rodgers can still light it up here and there, the defense has got to make his life a living hell. The Steelers, Aaron Rodgers needs to quickly zip that ball to his receivers because, as I said, with the Houston Texans defense, they can really get to the quarterback in a hurry. They can really force turnovers on Aaron Rodgers if he's not fast enough. So Aaron Rodgers, he has to do that. And he has to do it more than just to DK Metcalf and Pat Freiermuth. he's got to get to his other guys as well, like Calvin Austin III and Adam Thielen and other people too. The front four of TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, they have to pick apart at the Texans' so-so offensive line. It's the offensive line for the Texans is still a weak point, if not a very weak point. And with CJ Stroud playing one if his worst year as a pro, they can really get to him. They can really get to Stroud in this game. So this is probably another like kind of easy game to go after, given that both offenses are like vastly inconsistent. But when it comes to picking apart like a defense, I'm gonna give the Texans the edge here. They can really get to Aaron Rodgers because, like, sure, Aaron Rodgers can show flashes of his old self, but I think the Texans can find a way to shut that down real quick. So, in spite of CJ Stroud, especially if he goes mid again, the Texans defense can at least shut down Aaron Rodgers and pull away with this victory to close out wildcard weekend. So, yeah, that is my lengthy hour plus long Filthy Casuals preview to wildcard weekend. And yeah, let me know your predictions, your thoughts, and X factors for this upcoming kickoff to the playoffs. So let me know in the comments below on YouTube, or if you're listening to this on audio on your preferred podcast platform, let me know on a DM on my socials at Verical Lasagna. So yeah, that being said, that is it for this episode of the Verical Lasagna podcast. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna, wrapping up episode number 321 of this icy yet spicy podcast with all your filthy casual takes on the world of sports for you sports fans out there like you and me. And yeah, that is it for this episode, bringing you a preview of this NFL wildcard weekend that is to come. And until I see you, when I see you in the next one, peace out.